guys, what's going on? It is Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale. Today, very excited to have a Supercell interview. Wow, the power, I can't wait. The hype is going on today. I have Seth back on from Finland. Seth, thank you for joining me here on a Sunday on your off day to talk some Clash Royale. Welcome to the channel, man. Welcome back.
Thank you. I don't know how many times I've been on this channel now, but it's always a pleasure. It's always great to come on and talk about the balance changes in depth with more detail and kind of nuance than we can in just a simple patch note.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I have so many questions for you, some from my viewers, some from me. And I guess, you mentioned that you've been on the channel a ton, and it kind of brings me back to the good old days way back in like 2016, 2017, when you were a caster and a content creator and a YouTuber. And thinking back to those days, you were always like super engaged with the community. You had a lot of community events. You did the draft things on Twitch, and you're just always super engaged and involved with the community. And when you got hired, it's been over a year now, right, at Supercell?
Almost a year and a half, actually.
Wow, time flies. So a year and a half at Supercell, and you've actually kind of it continued to kind of carry that torch in terms of, alongside Drew, being on the TV Royale videos, putting out Reddit designer blog posts, talking on Twitter, responding to critics on Twitter. And in a way, I hope this isn't too personal, but in a way you become, to some people, also kind of like a lightning rod, because you're the guy who's always out there, So, hey, I have a bug, blame Seth, I'm not happy with this balance change, just blame Seth. So I just wanted to start kind of with a personal question on a personal level. Has that been difficult to deal with, like just having thousands of people on the internet yelling at you, and then on the other hand, thousands of people on the internet praising you too, but definitely just being that visible, one of those visible people alongside Drew on the Supercell team for Clash Royale? How has that been, and do you regret like being so forward facing?
No, I mean, I think one of the reasons that I was excited to join the Royale team is I felt that I could do a lot of the community facing stuff. Some people, especially kind of notoriously shy Finns, don't like to be on camera. So in a way, I feel like it's nice that I am able to do those videos and not be too worried about it. I'm a little flattered that everyone on Twitter thinks I can do so much more in the game than I can. I am not a technical person at all. But like I don't take it too personally. I like the feedback. It's obviously great to get constructive feedback from the community wherever it comes from. But even the people who are just, trying to be mean, I try to think of it as people getting a little bit of a catharsis, right? Like, you might have trouble at work, you might have trouble at school or with your parents, and you can't just like freak out and like scream at your teacher, scream at your parents, right? And I was a teenager too, and I remember one of the only things that would make me feel good was telling an adult that they're stupid and don't know what they're doing. So
it's a good way to take it, I think.
Yeah, like I imagine. I mean, you get it too as a YouTuber. There are people who make comments who, the comment is just there to hurt your feelings, and if you let every single one of them get to you, you'd never get anything done. So, yeah, maybe I'm a psychopath. I don't actually know, but the Twitter hate doesn't get to me too bad, and there are definitely days where even the meanest trolls kind of make me laugh.
That's cool. I mean, that's obviously a very healthy way of looking at it. So obviously you tend to continue doing that in the future. I think it's again, for all the hate, it's easy for me to say, right? But for all the critics and stuff out there, I think it's really a big benefit to the community to have that open line of communication, to have that somebody out there who can take the blows and of course take the praise as well. So thank you for doing that. Before we get to the last balance update, I wanted to ask a little bit about balance in general. So do you go into these balance updates every month, kind of looking at archetypes that are dominating the game and saying, okay, we need to kind of tone this down? Or is it more just card specific, or is it a macro meta? So do you just say, okay, these cards are too powerful, let's focus on them, and then kind of let the meta fall where it may?
I mean, I think the answer is a little bit of everything, right? Like, I wouldn't say that there's any one strict process that we always stick to, but in general, at the start of every month, and usually we start planning this out a little bit before the end of the month. So we lock balance changes. Like, for example, the October balance changes were decided on, finalized a week ago. So already this past week, we have started with the November balance changes, which is a list of, like, let's say 20 to 25 potential changes that we think are interesting for different cards, and then we just implement them in the dev build and start playing with them. We have internal playtesters, external playtesters, and we try out a lot of different things. And then as the month goes on, we whittle down that list from about 20 to around 5. And a lot of those decisions are based on, which cards are outliers, which deck archetypes are really strong, what card is causing a problem in the metagame. Can we buff a counter to that card to provide some more answers and stuff? So I think it's a little bit of everything. Like, there are definitely times when a single deck archetype is so strong that you have to target it specifically. But in general, I would say we try to just rein in outlier cards. And especially more recently, we've been working on reworks. So we have a big list of, maybe 8 to 10 cards that are needing a rework, and then a bunch of really big ideas on how to change them. And we try to test a few at a time, but of course you don't want to put all of the reworks in at once, because then your testing starts to get muddled, because like a lot of the cards in the game are not how they are in the live game, so the testing might not be as valid. So we try to put in just a small number of reworks at a time, and the ones that really click are the ones that get tracked for the balance changes.
I got you. That makes sense. Now, since you mentioned internal and external playtesting, just out of curiosity, if you're at liberty to speak on it, what is the process like of external playtesters? Are there like thousands of people that are secretly playing, the next balance change, or how does that work? How do you collect their feedback?
Yeah, when we have a dev build, and when we think we have a good set of changes, we commit the build. We make what's called a branch, which is basically just a separate an
Version of the
instance
game.
an instance of the dev build that will not be edited any further, so that way any like in progress work, it doesn't just continually break it. And then we send that off to an external playtesting team, which is it's a lot of playtesters across a wide range of trophies, and they play tons and tons of games and write up a report. It's a mixture of qualitative feedback, which is, how does it feel? Does it make sense? Does it feel stronger, better, worse? And then also incredibly detailed battle tracking. So you can see not just the win rate of the card, but what sort of decks were being used, which decks had the higher win rates, when paired with this new card or balance change. Even things like how long the games are lasting and the average crowns being taken, so we can get an idea of like, okay, this card, like I'll give you an example. We have a rework for Barbarian Hut that's really good. Like, if we released it, Barbarian Hut would be way better. But one thing that we saw was that it was really dragging the games out to draws a lot. It's a more powerful Barb Hut may not necessarily be something that was good for the metagame overall.
Mm-hmm.
So we use that playtesting to kind of decide if something needs further tweaking or testing, or if it's good to go. We can do multiple cycles of this. A card like Elixir Golem went through multiple different iterations and playtest reports before it really felt right. Because honestly, Supercell, we value having these really agile teams, but that means that we can't spend, the team members themselves cannot spend hundreds of hours a week playtesting. It's just not an efficient use of our time. So it's much better to get these external playtest teams where they can put it through literally thousands of games before we send it out to the wild.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I actually never knew about that process myself. Is there, I have to ask because I know I'm going to get a million comments. Is there a way people can apply to be a playtester, or is that you get that on lockdown already? You guys that?
I don't think we have any more. It's not something open to the general public. It is
Okay.
It is like a professional team of playtesters. I mean, obviously, so many games are coming out every year that there are companies that specialize in quality assurance testing, play testing. So we say, hey, can you find a lot of Clash Royale players? And they go, yeah, we'll do that.
Gotcha.
So
cool.
You know what, honestly, it's a really cool process. It's something that's really helped, and it's something that we started after Royal recruits went out, when we realized that maybe we as the development team are not the most skilled players. We cannot put these new cards or new balance changes through the thousands of games needed to really know if a card is good or not.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny that they started with the recruits. This is why I love these interviews, because these little kind of nuggets are just kind of interesting and fun to hear. Getting specifically to the last balance change, my big two takeaways, Seth, were the Witch rework and the Wall Breakers kind of huge buff slash rework, I guess buff. I personally think that Witch might be a little bit worse in ladder, and I think that the Wall Breakers will be a lot better in meta. Maybe talk a little bit about those two cards specifically, and maybe how you see the power index of each card after the changes.
Sure. I think Witch is going to be quite a bit better, but I'll get into that in a second. The first thing we started about with Witch was Witch is this weird, very binary card. She's not overall strong. If you look at her win rates, it's not like she's winning even 50% of the games that she's used in challenges. And even on the ladder, she doesn't have like the greatest win rate. But she's such a hit or miss card. If they don't have Poison, if they don't have Valkyrie, if they don't have Mega Knight or Wizard or what have you, you can kind of ride her to a free win because she doesn't die easily to spells. She spawns so many skeletons that things like Mini P.E.K.K.A. and P.E.K.K.A. can't really ever get to her. And because the spawning comes from her model, like literally directly from the center of her, she can get retargeted, or melee units can get pushed off of her by the freshly spawning skeletons. So what we wanted to do was make her just not frustrating, because once she doesn't feel so binary, once it doesn't feel like you're just getting free wins out of her or she's completely worthless, then you can actually balance her on a fair level. But when cards are really binary like that, you don't want to buff them too much, because then it feels like those free wins happen way too often. And even in kind of bad matchups, they're strong enough to push through. So I think the first thing we had to do was fix her design in that way. I think we succeeded in that. The skeleton spawning is roughly the same amount of skeletons as before, but they spawn around her in a square, which is kind of nice for protecting her from all sides from melee attackers. But once a melee attacker does get on her, it's not going to let go. So I think that's a big benefit. But also, you cannot underestimate the attack damage increase. When we were looking for how does Witch fit into the metagame, she doesn't really fit into any tournament or challenge decks, largely because she doesn't specialize in any one thing. She doesn't like fit any role that a deck would want other than just spawning a bunch of skeletons. And what we noticed was Musketeer was incredibly popular in a wide variety of archetypes, and there's not really that many cards that compete with Musketeer. Maybe Electro Wizard, Hunter sort of,
kinda,
but I don't think kind of. They're not really the same thing. Like, there's not that many long range attackers besides Electro Wizard, Musketeer, and then Magic Archer and Flying Machine feel very different in their own way, and not a direct comparison. So we thought, well, what if we made her closer to a Musketeer, where she could one hit minions, one hit Princess and Dart Goblin, and make her fill a role that way. Like, some decks would be willing to upgrade their Musketeer to a Witch for one more elixir. You get about the same DPS, but a stronger individual shot. And then as a bonus, a little bit more health and the skeleton spawning.
We'll have you just talked me into it. I don't know, Seth. I'll be honest.
Like Musketeer, right? It's a good card.
I didn't. I'm just basing this off of other people's like videos, because I didn't play test. I didn't play the new Witch much, but I wasn't even aware. I'm embarrassed to say that she could one shot a Princess and Dark Goblin now. She can?
Yeah, it'll be a 220 damage bolt.
Yeah, okay. All right, maybe I'm sold on Night Witch. Maybe I was wrong. All right, what about Wall Breakers?
So Wall Breakers, I think we learned a really good lesson with Wall Breakers, which was to be really aggressive with new building targeting cards, because you really want them to stand out and make their own archetype. But because building targeting cards don't fight back and they can just die without killing anything on the other side, you kind of want them to be pretty powerful, because otherwise people aren't going to switch their decks or not going to really give it a try. With Wall Breakers, we really liked them at 3 cost initially. They felt good in playtesting, and I actually still, like, to this day, think that they connect more often than people think that they connect, like when they're in draft or when people actually play a Wall Breakers deck. Like, they hit.
It's when they don't hit, it's just so unsatisfying. Like, so what? But you're right. When they do hit, it's like, whoa, that was a lot of damage.
Yeah, and so we just sort of thought, you know what? What's the point of Wall Breakers? The point was to enable hyper-fast cycle decks. We wanted Wall Breakers as a card to kind of be like Goblin Barrel, where the whole deck centers around cycling it very quickly to put your opponents off balance, keeping decks like Golem, Lava Hound, these really big decks like Sparky, Goblin Giant from ever really getting going, because you can just keep the pressure on them nonstop. So we thought, well, obviously the best way to do that is to lower the elixir cost and make them a lot faster to cycle. So we thought we'd just give it a shot. To be honest, we have tested it. It feels really good. It doesn't feel broken, because even though they cost 2, you can overpay. You can pay, for Lumberjack or Knight or Musketeer or whatever, and they'll kill the Wall Breakers and then still counterattack with full health. So I do think there's still going to be quite a bit of counterplay to it, but they are going to be dramatically better. They were sitting at something like a 30% win rate in challenges before this buff. So
yeah,
I have a pretty strong feeling that even if they get significantly better, they'll be around the 50% mark and not significantly past that.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what type of decks people make with Wall Breakers. Is it going to be fast cycle decks like you said, maybe paired with Miner or something, or is it going to be just putting them in everything almost? Because I think for 2 Elixir it's just such a value. And speaking of 2 Elixir, just a total random quick lightning bonus question here is Fire Spirits is another card with really 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 low use and win rates, at least that we see on the public facing side. Any like plans on Fire Spirits and where they kind of fit into everything right now and those 2 Elixir cards?
Something we've thought about is actually when we talk about how card mechanics work, right? You want card game mechanics to feel unique to each element. So, for example, every lightning card should stun to an extent, right? Like Electro, Wizard, and Zap, and Lightning, they all have this little stun effect. Poison is sort of damage over time. Ice involves slowing or freezing things. So what is Fire's mechanic? And one thing we were thinking about is that maybe Fire has the largest splash radius. Like all Fire cards sort of have this large radius, and so that would be something we could do to Wizard and Fire Spirits, which have the exact same splash radius right now. Perhaps it could be a little bigger to make them a little bit more new player friendly than they already are. I don't know if that's going to make them the best card in the game, but of course with them coming out of Furnaces, maybe a future Fire Spirit and Furnace rework together is the way to solve that.
Interesting. I want to ask you about the Elixir Golem, and I have some viewer questions, but I have to ask since you mentioned the Wizard and possibly buffing the Wizard, or at least reworking the Wizard. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think about cards like Wizard? Wizard is one of those weird cards that I never really see in CRL. I never really see winning a lot of grand challenges, but people still complain about it, in my comments at least, more than any other card in the game, just because of that kind of ladder dominance in that smallish range. How do you deal? What are the challenges of dealing with a card like Wizard as a balance guy?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the biggest challenge, is that the cards that people perceive as being very powerful are often not very powerful when you look at high skill cap games like challenges in CRL. Two big examples of this are like Hog Rider. Hog Rider is consistently one of the weaker win conditions in the game, but there isn't a day that goes by that I don't see Nerf Hog Rider.
Hog Rider,
yeah, of course, right? Now, I think the reason why it's very popular to use is it's very easy to use. It's strong, it's fast, it's not that expensive, so you can just plop it down and almost always see some effect from it. It will usually get, even 1 or 2 hits on a tower, and that feels like a very, consistent, easy to use offense. I think it's hated on the defensive side because anything that is very fast, that has the very fast speed, tends to be disliked because you need to have quick reaction times to deal with it. So if you're playing kind of more casually, or you're slightly distracted, or you're playing with a weaker connection, the very fast cards feel so much worse than something like a Golem, where even if you are way behind and you're definitely going to lose to that Golem, it feels like you have some time to fight back and put up a defense. Now, when it comes to Wizard, kind of same deal. Like, you need a ranged splash attacker. He does a lot of damage in a big splash radius. He's very straightforward and easy to use. And I think for a lot of people who aren't sure how to get the most out of the higher skill cap cards, they're just always going to rely on Wizard. Now, one of the challenges is that when these cards are weak, like Wizard is, then you tend to only see them over leveled on the ladder. And this creates this weird catch-22 where it's like, we're buffing Wizard. Well, why are you buffing Wizard? I always see over-leveled ones on the ladder. Well, if it was a balanced card, you wouldn't see over-leveled ones on the ladder. You would see ones at the appropriate level range, like everything else. So there's kind of this challenge where once a card like Wizard gets into that rut where they're not really strong and they're only seen when they're over-leveled, there's a huge perception problem with buffing those cards. Now, we will eventually buff them. I have buffed Wizard since joining the team in the past, so it's not something that we won't ever do, but it's something we got to handle carefully, and I think it's much easier to buff low use rate cards into the meta than just taking one of the most popular cards in the entire game and giving it a huge buff. People generally feel use rates more than they feel win rates. They don't really know if a card is 50% win rate or 55% win rate. That's like a little hard for an individual to perceive. But
true.
you can feel a use rate. If Wizard is in 1/3 of the ladder games, then like you see it all the time, and you really don't want it to get buffed.
It's so true too, because you're right. Hog Rider and Wizard are two cards that I get a lot, but win rates are never that high for either card. Even on ladder, and it's still the people. I still see comments because of the popularity. I think, like you said, and the kind of the nature of the cards. So interesting.
We try to take a pretty long-term view on this. We assume that every player will eventually hit a max deck, and so the idea is that even if Wizard is very popular in certain trophy ranges, those players will eventually max their deck out and then realize that Wizard is maybe holding them back, and then swap it out for a better card at that point. Now, ideally, we buff Wizard and make it, just as good as any other card. But until then, I sort of imagine that there are people who get out of that trophy range and then swap Wizard out for something else.
Okay, I want to ask you about that, assuming everybody will have a max deck. But before that, let me ask about the Elixir Golem. So Elixir Golem, a brand new card, brand new mechanic, brand new maybe archetype type leader type card, or win condition, I should say, leader, a new leader card. What do you think about the Elixir Golem? I think the community is split right now. Half of the people say it's going to be an OP, amazing, game-changing card. Some people are saying it's trash. Why would I ever want to give 4 Elixir to my opponent? I guess talk about how it was balancing such a unique and interesting card, and then how you see the strength of the card, what type of decks you see it being played in.
Yeah, this was a really fun card to develop. It actually just kind of worked out of the box with playtesting. We had the mechanic of giving your opponent Elixir from the Elixir Capture game mode that came however many months ago. And so we had this idea of a card that split into 2, which then split into 2 again. And then giving the Elixir back to the opponent was sort of the aha moment, as opposed to like, should we just make another 7-cost Golem? We're like, wait a second, why don't we make this character cost less and then give your opponent Elixir? The very first version was insanely strong. When we set it off to playtesting, it came back with like a really, really high win rate. And that was actually a 4-cost Elixir Golem that had significantly higher stats. It was more like an 8 or 9 cost card for 4. That was really, really strong. We both reduced the stats dramatically, but also cut it down to 3 cost because we felt we wanted to separate him from Battle Ram and Hog Rider and a lot of these other 4-cost building targeters. We felt like, how could we really make him unique and something you'd really want to play? And 3 cost felt like the right discounted amount for this kind of card. And I think he's gonna be very strong. I think we learned our lesson from Wall Breakers. Like I said earlier, we want to make sure these cards are coming out a little bit more on the aggressive side, because even if he's a little on the strong side, he doesn't defend himself. So even if it's a strong win condition, you still have the ability to fight back against it. I think the 3 archetypes that are going to benefit the most are Graveyard, because it's so much stronger than Ice Golem in terms of an offensive tank.
Yeah, for 1 more Elixir. Granted, you give it back, but yeah.
Yeah. Balloon as well, because Giant Balloon is obviously hard to stop, but Giant Balloon uses up all your Elixir. With Elixir Golem and Balloon, you still have a little bit of Elixir left to cast anything from a Zap to a Fireball, maybe to clear out enemy minions or some other anti-air troop that they play. So I think Elixir Golem's little discount over something like Giant or Battle Ram or whatever at that point is going to be pretty meaningful. And last, but certainly not least, is 3 Musketeers. So 3 Musketeers actually have still a pretty decent win rate. They obviously have a very low use rate in challenges. They're not nearly as popular as they used to be, but their win rate is still pretty strong. I think what that deck needs is just more synergistic cards. Ever since the Barbarians got reworked to have lower health, all those Battle Ram sorts of cards don't fit so well with 3 Musketeers because they can't absorb lightning. Well, now 3 Musketeers could maybe play Ice Golem and Elixir Golem and have some very cheap tanks to put on either side. And I think Elixir Golem, being as powerful as it is, makes a really good pairing on the 1 Musketeer side, while Ice Golem or something can go on the 2 Musketeer side, and it's splitting up your offense pretty well. I really think the decks that are going to want Elixir Golem are ones that need to punish their opponent when their opponent is low on Elixir. So, for example, Elixir Golem really shines in the same situations that like Goblin Giant shines. So when your opponent plays a Golem or an Elixir Collector or a Lava Hound, and this is your time to go in the other lane, just push in the other lane while they don't have much to defend with, Elixir Golem is amazing with that. Because even just, for example, Elixir Golem Night Witch is only 7 elixir, so you don't even need a full 10 elixir to have a pretty comprehensive push that's coming in and going to be pretty relentless on their tower if they can't get to it.
Yeah, do you see it being paired with like a lot of Xe NATO type things, just so to make that to get some of that elixir exchange back on the defensive end?
Yeah, I think any Elixir Golem deck is going to have to figure out how to deal with the counterattack. You can do Executioner Tornado or Baby Dragon, any other splasher with Tornado to try to offset that. But I think what's going to be smart playing against Elixir Golem is to not just put it all back in one lane. You can assume they're going to have something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe the better thing to do is, if you're like a P.E.K.K.A. Ram deck, is you defend like normal, but you use that extra elixir not to bundle up on the same lane, but to come on the other side with like a battle ram, and then force the execution or tornado deck to try to defend both sides, which they're not going to be as great at.
Yeah, I saw like in the early gameplay, I actually saw a lot of players kind of, obviously people just had no time to kind of prepare at all, but I saw a lot of players just saying, okay, I kill the Elixir Golem, I'm just going to unload on the opponent, getting that +4 elixir, and it kind of led to needlessly aggressive pushes, you know what I'm saying? Like the person playing against the Elixir Golem. So I think that's going to be an adjustment too, how to defend and how to actually take advantage of that 4 elixir. And I wanted to ask you too, the Elixir stealing kind of mechanic, do you see that as a mechanic that's added to the game that could actually go on to more cards that you add in the future as well? Like, I don't know, building or something like that. Basically, really strong cards that you kind of take the value up front, and then you give it back later on.
Yeah, certainly, potentially. I want to say never.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to say always, definitely, or no, never. It is Elixir Golem's kind of unique trait right now, so I don't expect to see it again on like a very a new card, like something that's going to come up in the next card release or two. It'll probably remain unique for a while. But we have talked a lot on the team about how, we have largely covered all the basic designs that you could have for characters. Knight exists, Mega Minion exists, P.E.K.K.A. exists, Minion Horde exists, etc. We could release like a 6-cost Minion Horde, or like a 4-cost Big Bat Swarm or whatever, right? But that feels like pretty cheap for a new card release, and it's not meaningfully different than some of the other cards that already exist in the game. So any new card we release needs to have something that feels different and unique from most any other card in the game. And that means we're going to be exploring a lot more diverse designs and interesting trade-offs. I love how Elixir Golem gives you a benefit, but then later interacts with your opponent. It's not like you're playing a solitaire card. There's something that you and your opponent have to be aware of with it while it's on the field. And I hope that we can keep doing more cards like that, where there's a little bit of a beginning, middle, and end to how they play.
Yeah. I mean, I love the concept of Elixir Golem. I'm one of the people who actually think it's going to be really strong. I just can't wait to see it in game. And I just love the new kind of the Elixir trading, stealing aspect adding to the game. Again, just like you said, you put it really well there. It just adds something that you have to pay attention to, both players all the time. And I love that. And another thing that I actually like, just kind of randomly, is I love the enter the arena abilities like Mega Knight and Ewiz. Like, I just love that. So, just whatever in the future, keep that in mind. I think they're so interesting and dynamic. Like, it adds another, like you said, a beginning, a middle, and the end. Certainly comes into the arena with a really strong beginning. So I love those cards too. I have 5 viewer submitted questions. We'll go lightning round because it's already kind of late into the interview here. But let me start off with Clan Wars. A lot of people asking about Clan Wars. People, let me just cut it short. When are you going to do something to Clan Wars? When are you going to improve Clan Wars or change it or revamp it or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give you a timeline. Obviously, it's still early in the process. I would say pretty confidently that the December update will not be Clan Wars. Okay. But we have started work on things that we would like to do. The problem is, of course, Clan Wars is really like the biggest feature in the game. So to update Clan Wars is by definition the biggest thing you can do in the game. And it's not something that we just want to take. We don't want to rush it. We don't want to be reckless about it. We want to make sure that when it comes out, it is clearly, definitively better and something that everyone is excited about. So a little bit of work has been started on it, but it will. Don't get your hopes up for the next update.
Okay. CG asks, is Pass Royale going to be a thing forever? Like, is there going to be like a season 39 like Survivor eventually?
Yeah, there is no plan to stop Pass Royale. It is the monthly progression system that we intend to use until the heat death of the universe, or we change
I love it. All right, so we got about what 11 trillion years or something.
it.
All right, Ricardo asks, free to play level 11 player here, playing for over 1 year. My personal bets is 5740 trophies, and it's actually not even a question, but I wanted to share it with you, just kind of get your thoughts on it. He says, I hate having to use the same deck over and over and over to trophy push, but it feels like I really have no choice other than to do so to compete on ladder, because you can only kind of upgrade or focus on upgrading one deck. Any kind of general thoughts on this problem, this kind of one deck issue?
Yeah, that's the single biggest thing that we have to fix in Clash Royale, is the idea that most of the existing systems in the game push you to just play one deck. I mean, you could play a lot of different decks, but the game is in many ways encouraging you just to focus on one deck. And so we need to solve that as a team. And I think that's why a lot of these bigger features are taking time, because you need to make sure that that's the end goal, is that people get the chance to master so many more cards in the game than they currently do, because people who play multiple decks, people who get to try a lot of different cards, they enjoy the game more, they play it for years, and they have a better time while doing it.
Okay, should we anticipate perhaps a maybe a little step in the right direction in the September and December update on that one?
I mean, you've been seeing them in a
Yeah.
way. Like when we do challenges, especially these weird game modes like the spawn wall breakers, we're hoping that you get to try out different cards in your deck. When you saw the mega deck feature, that was an idea of what would it be like to play with more cards in a single deck. Would that feel better or worse? Like, we have been thinking about this for a while, and you'll continually see, attempts to make this attempts to make that stick, I guess, that give you opportunities to play different decks, master different archetypes. Here's a good example. Do you ever play League of Legends or
I've watched it, but I've never been an avid player. But
World of Warcraft?
yeah.
Okay, so you know that playing a warrior when you start off playing a warrior, that's the only class you play. World of Warcraft feels a certain way. It has a very specific way you play the game. And then you switch to like a warlock, and you go, oh my God, this is so different. Everything about what I'm doing feels so different from how I used to play, that this feels like a whole new game. Now, I think you could argue that the difference between something like Golem and Expo and Logbait are so different that if you were to play them back to back to back, you would feel like you were almost playing 3 different games. And I think that's good. I think it's good that players get the opportunity to do that. So it's our job as the game team to provide those opportunities and make it worthwhile for the player to play multiple different decks.
Yeah, I mean, I love that analogy. I couldn't agree more. Do you think that is there room for maybe the team exploring some sort of a, this gets very murky, and I personally don't think it would work, but maybe sort of like trading a card that you've maxed out for another card, like as a one-time thing, or any way to make the transition to a different deck a little bit smoother than just new game modes? Or is that something that the team is talking about or thinking about? Or
yeah, I mean, trade tokens are essentially that. I mean, I know it's not the same as trading max, but like, when we're thinking of how can we help you max out your deck quicker, and then once you're maxed out, can we help you level up 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th cards easier as well. Yeah, I can't speak to anything in the future, but just at least understand that we want you to play more than one deck. It is one of our main driving concerns over the next year or two, is how can we make it fun and useful and worth of your time to play multiple decks instead of just focusing on one deck for 3,000 games in a row.
Got you. Okay. Next one, second to last question. Rarity issue. Like way back in the day, I think the original team of CR came out in like a forum post. That's how long ago it was. And they said that their mentality when it comes to rarities within the game is that a more rare card, such as legendary, should not be better than, say, a common or a rare or an epic, but rather just a little bit more unique, a little bit more, have more dynamics that it adds to the game, more mechanics, more complex, in short. Do you still feel that way? What separates a common from a rare, in your opinion?
Well, power level wise, all the cards should be balanced, and we don't, when we're looking at stats and deciding what to balance, there's really not any preferential treatment given to any rarity or any certain card type. I agree that complexity is usually tied to rarity, but we've also begun to think of that as a sliding scale with arena. So for example, a common in Spooky Town can be more complicated than a common in Training Camp. I think we're really happy with the current Training Camp setup. Those 12 cards feel very straightforward, very safe and easy to understand, and all 12 of those cards are something that you can level up and play well into Legendary Arena. So it's not like we start you off with cards that we expect to be bad that you would replace as you play through. The Musketeer, Archer, Giant, Prince, with the recent buffs to Witch and Wall Breakers, we even hope to that all of those cards are things you can use forever. In terms of the cards that already exist, there are definitely some cards that I wish we could go back and change the rarity of. Like, I wish Mega Minion could be a common. I can't think of a card that would be better suited just to be a common than Mega Minion. P.E.K.K.A. could almost be lower rarity because it's so simple, but at the same time, I do think there is some value to making very big and impressive cards epic. Right? Like, when you open an epic, you go, wow, cool. Like, this thing's got to be really neat, right? And I think cards like P.E.K.K.A. do fill that role because it's so big and so hard to kill, does so much damage every swing that you're like, all right, I get it. This is a sweet, big, scary card. Maybe that belongs to be an epic. But from our standpoint, if you look at Trophy Road, there's a lot more common slots for us to design than epics and rares. So we've been really trying to push ourselves recently to design commons that can fit into the later arenas.
I like that. And speaking of rarities, do you I have to ask, any plans ever to add a 5th rarity?
Never say never. No, like never,
Okay.
never. Like, no, like I
Okay.
no, I wouldn't. Again, like, don't get your hopes up for the December update.
I got you. I got you. All right. Last question for you, Seth. What is on your next rework radar? Which card are you kind of targeting, or cards are you targeting that you think that might be the next Witch, or the variety of other cards that you've reworked so far?
It's honestly, it's the stuff that you probably could guess. Every time I see a balance change posted, the people are like, oh yeah, well, what about A, B, C, D, E? Like, those are all cards that are on our list. So
yeah, like Heal, Elite Barbarians, etc. Do you think that what do you think about Mirror?
Yeah, mirror is a tough one. Mirror is something that we have a few ideas what to do with, but it's weird because one of the most common uses of mirror is to mirror spells, but a lot of the reworks we think of for mirror would be making mirror exclusive to troops, but then giving it some other bonus instead. But
interesting.
The +1 cost and +1 level is not clearly working out. It's not that common of a card, and we'd like it to be a little bit more common than it is. But in general, I posted a bowler rework on Twitter that's still in testing. We have a amazing rework to heal that we all really like on the team, but
you're going to change it into a paladin.
Yeah, no, but it needs a lot more work than what we currently have. Like, we can make it work in numbers, but it doesn't look right. So we need a lot more, like, graphical work and stuff like that to get that thing ready for release. But honestly, like, whatever cards you think need to be, like, dramatically buffed because they've been at the bottom of the charts for a long time, we're aware of them as well, and we're working on them. I just can't promise any timeline because a lot of times we play test them, and whichever ones are proving to be the most balanced and exciting and people are liking in the playtest, those are the ones that get fast tracked for launch.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, that's all the questions I have for you. You've been super generous with your time, Seth. Just wanted to thank you again for coming on the channel. I look forward to season 4, Shocktober in Clash Royale, and then maybe the December update. And look forward to having you back maybe around that time if I can ask you and put the pressure on right now on on video. But seriously, man, thank you so much for coming back on the channel. I always appreciate it.
As you're reading it back to me, I'm thinking out loud. I don't want to say anything about the next update in terms of timeline because we are literally just getting started on it. So
sure,
I'm not confirming that there is a December update. I'm just saying that we are.
No. I think that traditionally we've gotten a December-ish update. So I guess we'll call it the winter update.
Yeah, we're still in the planning phase, so we can't even say what is coming and when. But I just wanted to click
the next update. How about that? The next update. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and looking forward to seeing all the comments and feedback of season 4. We're really excited about season 4. It's for my money, it's got the coolest tower skin we've ever released. I'm a big sucker for Halloween stuff, so I got to get that Frankenstein goblin emote. And
your Ewiz costume was on point, by the way.
Oh man, I had to shave my beard because the hot glue wouldn't come out. Like, after we pulled it off, there's these little droplets of like wood glue. It smelled awful, and I had to shave the beard. But yeah, no, those videos are always the fun to do, although those costumes are very warm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the meta is going to change a lot with Wall Breakers and Witch, and we'll keep an eye on cards like Executioner and see if they need to be nerfed in the following balance changes. But honestly, balance for Clash Royale is feeling great. I'm really excited to rework a lot of these cards that have needed it for a long time, and the community has had a great reception so far to these October balance changes, so we hope you enjoy them.
All right, Seth. I think that we certainly will. I'm interested to hear the feedback too in the comments below. So, guys, go ahead and drop a line. Any opinions you have on anything we talked about, I'm sure we'll both take a look at a lot of the comments on this video. So, Seth, thanks again, guys. Make sure you follow Seth on Twitter. He does post quite frequently about the state of the meta and food tier lists. If you want to catch either of those things, you'll see a lot of it on Seth's Twitter account. So, guys, that's going to do it for the video. Huge shout out to Bren Chong and to Stats Royale. Check out their information in the show notes below, along with Seth's Twitter. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, guys.